Break the Ice podcast is presented by Superfood. If you have a high-performance team that needs fueling, check out mysuperfd.com for more information. Hey everyone, welcome back to another edition of Break the Ice. I'm Mike Vogel here for WashingtonCaps.com. Today we're joined by Chef Robbie Wood of Superfood, who handles the Caps feed needs. And Robbie, for a long time, you've been doing this for years now. Yeah. Feeding the Caps on game days, practice days, breakfast, lunch, post game. Let's start with your background, because okay. I mean, I worked a ton in restaurants. My first job, hourly paid job was restaurants, and I've always believed that if everyone did some time, even just 6 months working in the restaurant business, we would all treat each other a lot better as human beings.
Anthony Bourdain agrees with you there.
Yeah, well, I miss that guy.
Yeah, 100%.
I love that guy.
Yeah.
So let's just go over your genesis, your story of starting in the food service business and how that led to the creation of Superfood and your relationship with the Caps.
So I started as a teenager. Basically, if I didn't want to go to work with my dad, this was in the early 90s. So I got to get a job. So I started at 13 washing dishes and chopping lettuce and just kind of kept going. I was a line cook when I was in high school, and when I was in college, I actually worked up and became a sous chef while I was at the University of Georgia, and that's what clicked. I loved being in the kitchen way more than I like being in the classroom, and I'm always moving. I can't sit still kind of person, so the kitchen really made sense, and I grew up, I guess I took it for granted when I was a kid, but I grew up, my grandmother's brothers and sisters all lived on farmland outside of Savannah, Georgia, where I'm from. And so they would bring corn and tomatoes and stuff to my grandmother. She was the oldest, and so they would bring her all these beautiful fresh vegetables and fruits in the summertime, and we'd sit in her backyard around this massive oak tree and cream the corn and can the tomatoes and pickle the cucumbers, so those are like my favorite memories as a child, and I didn't even realize at the time that was really preparing me for my career in food. Because I knew where fresh food came from, and I knew what pickles, and cucumbers were supposed to taste like. When I was a kid, my grandma would just slice cucumbers and drizzle vinegar on them, and we'd eat that before dinner, and that's because they were great cucumbers. So like I said, I was at University of Georgia. Didn't see myself continuing my education, and decided to drop out and become a chef, and so that was when I was 20, and then I got an opportunity and became an executive chef when I was only 23 years old. Wow. So that was on Tybee Island, which is basically Savannah Beach. And so I had a boss who saw something in me that I wasn't able to see yet, and he gave me a real opportunity, and I worked real hard to try to live up to that. And so
I think restaurant work, too, prepares you to be part of a team, because you are. I mean, every night is a challenge. You're looking to get through it, and you need each other to do it. Mm-hmm. Like, no one person can run any restaurant that I'm aware of, any good restaurant. And so I feel like that's a natural fit. Like, if you've got a lot of restaurant experience, you know a lot about how a team operates and how important each little cog in the machine is. So it seems to me like it's kind of a natural fit. And the other part of that equation is restaurant work. While it can be fun and exciting in the moment and challenging, it also can wear you out.
Yes.
The hours,
yes.
Just everything about it. And when you get done, you can't just go home and go to sleep. You got to wind down. And so for me anyway, it was kind of those hours after I got out of work that made me realize that I couldn't do this for the rest of my life. So I feel like it's a hard thing to make a career at, but
It is in certain ways, like line cooking's a young man's game, right? Like,
For sure.
in my 30s, I couldn't do the 15 hours on my feet like I used to. But you're right. The camaraderie at the end of the shift, and when you feel like, oh, we just won that, like we crushed it,
Yep.
everybody did great and nobody sent food back. We got tons of great compliments, when you crush it, and you all come together, it is, from the dishwasher to the bus boys to the bartender, the whole restaurant has to really move in unison, and so I agree the teamwork that goes into that. I think is it's community at foundation, right? It's how we should be working with each other in daily kind of daily life.
Yeah.
It prepares you for the challenges because you realize that if my station's not set up, because the prep cook didn't do something, I can't execute my job, right? And that's why we all depend on each other, and that translates. And that's been a really cool part about doing what I do for the Caps is to kind of be on the backside and to see how they get coached and to see how, like they train on the little things,
Details.
they're training on details, and they're setting up systems and they're doing these things so that the players can focus on their on the details of the job, and they're not thinking they don't have to think too big, right? The last thing you don't want them to think is overthinking on the ice, right? They got to be out there playing.
Yeah.
Same thing in the kitchen, the last thing I want is for them to have to figure out something. It should be clockwork. It should be right in front of them. And now with what we do now with teams or with large events, if we're feeding an event for 2,000 people, like that stuff has to be a well-oiled machine. Nobody should be thinking about the bigger picture. They should be thinking about what's right in front of them.
So how did you make the leap from executive chef at a restaurant to starting Superfood and the relationship with the Caps?
So I was in the restaurant business for a long time. I actually got moved up to D.C. to open restaurants for a gentleman, and did that. Opened 4 restaurants. Was in D.C. for a couple of years, and then decided it was time for me to go out on my own. So I was consulting, and came across the opportunity to cook for the Caps. And it was development camp, 2013, in between the 12 and 13 season. And I came in and cooked for those for a week for the team, and everything went well. And then we were a company called Eco Caters.
Yep.
The Caps were ahead of the curve, and that's what I think was also surprising to me as I got into this field, as I got into this niche in my field, was not everybody was doing it. The Caps were actually ahead of the curve for going out and finding high quality nutrition and having their players sit down and eat together. So they realized how that kind of community around food would continue the coaching, would continue that bonding, the chemistry can be built, guys learn what each other like to eat, so the Caps were really, I think they've always, kind of taken the next step ahead of some of the other teams, because they've always trying to develop and get better. And so it was an incredible opportunity. I had some health challenges and a couple of years before that, and so I had really started to dive in to, why are my ingredients rebelling against me? Why is my body not responding to this ingredient or that ingredient? And so I had been studying kind of nutrition on my own, and then this opportunity comes up, and I could speak intelligently around carbs versus protein, and really just my whole leverage point is the quality of the food, right? It's the quality of the ingredients. So I wasn't selling my vision as a nutritionist. My vision has always been, I can take the hard work of the farmers and deliver it to the people that need it, and try to embellish it a little bit and make it taste great and present it well and stay out of the way, basically, because the ingredients have to speak them for themselves, and that's been the whole foundation of how we built Superfood. So we started Superfood in 2015. Because we were doing more and more sports business, and I saw that there just wasn't a company out there that was really targeting performance nutrition at that level. And so I thought, man, there's an opportunity here for us to build a brand around sports performance nutrition and deliver, all of these farmers and fishermen I'd already been working with for years, because that's how I built my career. Like I said, it started with me in my grandma's oak tree, right?
Yeah.
And so whenever I was an executive chef at 23, I was scared to death. I had no idea what I was doing, but I knew where good food came from, and that was from farmers and fishers. So that's how I built that restaurant's menu. That's how I built every menu since then, is how do I start with the ingredients, start with the season, start with what's available, and then build the menu from there. And that's really the foundation for how we built Superfood was, and ingredients with integrity, and then we designed the menus to, carbs, macronutrients and all that stuff came in with working with amazing people like Sue Saunders and our friend Mark Nemish, who's been with who's with the Caps forever, and they were the team. It was, that was making all those decisions when I came in, and really provided me with a structure where I could learn as I stayed with the team. And now, we're going into year 12 next year.
Yeah, and I've been around here since the mid-'90s, and I've seen the evolution. They had a nutritionist on staff when I started, but it was, I think it was more of an advisory type of a thing. But like you said, they have been ahead of the curve, and the players know the NHL is the never hungry league. These guys are always eating because they always need the calories. But food is such a personal thing. Everybody's got different tastes. People have allergies. People have, to your point, you're mentioning ingredients rebelling against your body. People, that's a very real thing with people. We've had players over the years where we've had to keep certain ingredients even off the airplane until that player was no longer, with the team, and then you could reintroduce those items to the plane. So you're responsible for feeding, several dozen players, athletes, and staff and stuff every day. How much dialogue goes into that as far as guys coming in and saying, hey, I really love this, or I really hate this. Can we work this in? And how do you balance all that where you've got to make sure everyone gets fed, but everyone likes what they're eating too?
Well, we start with the 80-20 rule. You're never going to please everybody all the time, right? So we make sure that it's, there's variation within the weeks and the months, and we're looking at that to be sure that, if certain players don't like certain things, that they're not seeing them all the time. But yeah, we have feedback all the time. I'm in the locker, I'm in the lounge with the players when we're feeding them. I'm making sure I'm watching, as they go through and paying attention.
Yeah.
Because some hockey players are not going to come out all the time and say, this, I don't like this, I don't like that.
Yeah.
It's just not that type of environment all the time. So we try to be sure that, if we put up a menu and there's an ingredient on there that doesn't, and it just sits there, we're paying attention to that, right? And we're asking questions. Oh, like nobody likes grits, I guess, like those kinds of things, right?
Yeah.
Learning curves. Not that there's anything wrong with the dish. It's just okay. It didn't hit with the team, so we won't do that again. On the kind of the nutrition side, like you were saying, the more we know, the more it is very unique. It's personal. Everybody's body digests and breaks down food in different ways. Where we come from, our lineage, all of those things, epigenetics of our childhood, all of those things play a role. And so we try to make sure that everything that they see on the buffet is of a quality level that they're going to be happy with. And then they can navigate it, label it really well, make sure like allergies especially, bright highlights, and making sure allergies stand out. We've been fortunate the last couple of years and haven't had a whole lot to deal with, but there's, anytime there is one, that's a big concern. We got to make sure that we're talking with that person, we'll pull that person aside personally and just say, hey, if there are some things that you really like, that we can make sure you see on days, if there's, they can't have gluten or nuts or whatever the case, we'll make sure we balance it out. And anytime there's an ingredient out there that they can't have, there's also plenty of options that they can have, so that we don't have to necessarily avoid it for the whole team, but it can be isolated and set aside. Now there's anaphylactic allergies, and then there's intolerances, and there's layers to it. And depending on the layer, that's how severe we have to treat it. So if it's an anaphylactic allergy, then that's setting off all the bells and whistles.
Right.
We're building, we're making sure the protocols are built for that.
And what are the differences between what guys need to be putting in their bodies before they go out on the ice versus after they come off or after they're done working out in the room, and how much attention do you guys have to pay to that?
So the we feed them, breakfast and lunch on a daily basis, and there's balance of carbs and protein, lean proteins on game days. There's a big spread. We've done a lot of work on the game days over the years. It's one of those meals I've made, probably 1,000 times at this point, if not more. The pre versus the post is interesting because it's still evolving, right? That science and what people are seeing, what nutritionists are looking at is still evolving. And complex carbs early, simple carbs as we get closer to game time. So we want the complex carbs so that it's a long, slow burn and it gives them that sustainable energy. And then simple carbs as the game time approaches, because then your body doesn't have to work as hard, right? And you're able to get some energy as the game approaches. Lean protein and simple carbs after. You want for glycogen uptake and for recovery, you want to be able to get hydration, glycogen, and protein, lean protein into them right after the game, or as soon as after the game as possible, right? That's a variable too. Some guys can come off the ice and crush, a big bowl of pasta. Some guys can't eat for hours after the game because their stomach has to unwind and they have to be able to relax, which I can relate to, Like I used to get off my shift after 14 hours in a kitchen surrounded by food, and an hour later I'm starving because I was surrounded by food all day, and I'm eating bites at a time to make sure everybody else's food tastes delicious, and then I get off and my stomach unwinds because I finally relax, and then I'm starving. So even the timing of that food is different per player, just based on how their body can kind of manage it.
And it's kind of remarkable to me, even after all these years, how much food is available to these guys, especially on a game day. Like you said, they're going to eat breakfast together, and that's home or road. Right. Breakfast, and it's a big spread. Lunch, it's a big spread, and then within an hour or so after lunch, there's what's called snack, and that's like before you go over on the road. It's right before you get on the bus to go over to the visiting arena for the game, and then even there, once you get to the arena, after you've just had snack,
right?
You're going there, and here's another spread at the arena. It's like bagels
bananas,
and peanut butter, jelly, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And then after the game, there's usually a little stack of pizzas that have been delivered late in the third period. That those are there, and then you get onto the plane. There's more food, full meals. And you're talking about now it's midnight. You might have another game the next night. Like how do you have guys that don't eat some of those meals?
Yeah, and that's what I was talking about, the timing piece, right?
There's guys too, like I'll bring up a guy, Jay Beagle had, this guy, I heard stories of him consuming like 10,000 calories a day at times, and then this guy would just, because he was nonstop. This guy, he never wanted a day off. If the team had a day off, he would sometimes show up and get out on the ice and go out and burn.
Well, and he had a high metabolism too. Like Jay would have been, probably $190 or $185 if he didn't eat so much, right? So in order to play at the weight and then play at the way, the style of hockey that he wanted to play, he needed to be at over 200 pounds. So Jay really had to focus on his diet, focus on that consumption, and he was, he's still, he's still a favorite around here. I think even after all these years being gone,
such a good dude,
such a guy. I mean, he would. Hey chef, there's some leftover? This is in the early days, Can I take? And most people would take it home he would take it down and give it to somebody on the street,
That's
what
good.
I mean? Just those kinds of things. I love Jay, but to see the volume of food, he was one of those ones that kind of, that was my first. He
was an outlier.
He was like, and I would just watch him eat, and I was just thinking, oh man, I got to go back to prep. The first couple of rounds, these guys are crushing it. I got to get back in the kitchen and make sure we got enough food for tomorrow. Back to what your question was, though, about it. It's about the timing, too, because some guys, they're going to eat, in the locker room. They're going to, crush something before they get on the bus and go to the plane. Or some guys, they can't eat until they get on the plane, so there's going to be food on the plane for them. So just having it available at all those, different time periods, that way each individual player can design their regimen the way it suits their body. And there's never a question, they're not guessing, oh, is there going to be food here? Is there going to be food there? There's going to be food, right? And it's just they can make that decision on their own about the timing. And they might not feel great after a game. Maybe they were playing a little sick or something, and they just don't have the appetite that they usually do after a game. Then they know there's food on the plane.
And we always get that text saying what the food is going to be on the plane too, which is helpful. How about guys who there's two guys that have come through here in my time here who, in my opinion, made decisions later in their careers. Both guys played way over 1,000 games, but they made decisions about how they were going to treat their body mid-career, and in both cases, I believe, extended their careers. I'm talking about Brooks Orpik and Zdeno Chara.
I could have guessed those.
Yeah, I'm sure. But I think too that especially Z, because he was vegan when he was here. Mm-hmm. He had an impact on what the rest of us who eat those meals have. And I mean, I've been vegetarian since I was 8 years old. So Chara and I turned Z on to some protein pasta, chickpea pasta.
Okay.
That he started. This was during the pandemic. I was ordering this stuff via the mail, and I gave him a couple boxes, and he loved it. But so what are your thoughts on that? Because I honestly believe that both of those guys, and I think there was a little bit of, not to the point where anyone else changed their diet, but I think they saw what the effect of those guys' diets had on their careers and their longevity, and I think they may have made some adjustments. Some of those teammates made some dietary adjustments based on what they were seeing from those two guys.
Oh, 100%, especially Brooks, because he was here.
He was here longer.
And because he was, the leadership group. He was in the leadership group for us. And obviously, Zdeno, wherever he goes.
He was only here for that. Yeah.
He was here for a year, but wherever he goes, he's in the leadership
100%.
group, right? People are looking to him because of his longevity.
Yep.
And I agree. I think especially, Brooks is somebody I know much better. Like you said, it was during the pandemic, so our service style was everything was wonky back then. But my guys, the staff in the kitchen was like, "You really want me to put this much tofu in there? Like, I've got all this tofu's for one person?" Like, it's like, yes, he's the biggest vegan you've ever seen in your life. Like all that tofu is for one person. Like this mound of chickpeas is for one human being. But with Brooks, he really made my job easier. Because he was an evangelist of good food. He was making decisions based on quality. Absolutely. And I think he's impacted the players like Tom Wilson, and some of the other guys. I think Tom was ears wide open whenever Brooks was talking about that stuff. And Brooks and I would have conversations in the locker room, or in the lounge rather, with the buffet there. He would ask me questions, I would ask him questions, we'd go back and forth, and then the people around are hearing that, right? And they're watching Brooks, how he can deliver and how he can continue even as he was getting up in his 30s, and they saw that that's the value in his diet, So I agree that Brooks led in a lot of ways, but around nutrition, he was a big part of how we could evolve the program, how people were paying attention, and how it, I can talk till I'm blue in the face. He can say 3 words, and those 3 words are going to mean more than everything I said. So it was really an asset for me as the chef that was trying to evolve, and because I could be genuine with him and ask him questions, and just be like, what about this? How do you think the guys will respond to this? And then we could test it, and then he would give me real feedback.
Yeah, Brooks was something else. And a lot of people don't realize too that when the Caps are flying out on a road trip, whether it's 1 game, 5 games, whatever, you're supplying food for that outbound flight too. What goes into that as far as deciding what and how do you get that food out to Dulles and onto the bird and then into people's bellies? That
was a fun kind of addition. In-flight catering, it's famous for how bad food is on the plane, right? And so to tackle that and to try to deliver a product that was satisfactory, that you can enjoy while you're in flight. So it took some research and studying, what's happening with the olfactory senses, what's happening, why does food taste bad in the air? And so we found out glutamate receptors still work in the air. So we try to focus around, foods that are high in glutamates. Most people know glutamate because of monosodium glutamate, right? And they think it's a bad thing, but it's not. It's one of those myths that monosodium glutamate is an ingredient. It's not good or bad. It's just how we use the ingredient that makes it good or bad. But glutamates are a certain type of flavor molecule, and your receptors are still active while you're in the air, whereas your olfactory sensors are destroyed because the plane's been dehydrated to pressurize it, and then it's been pressurized. So everything your olfactory senses to taste and smell depend on has been destroyed by the cabin. So it was fun to develop and continue to develop recipes and ways to get food on the plane that was actually received well. We go out and deliver it to Dulles and load it on the plane. We deliver it, and then they load it on the plane, and so we do that. In a couple of cities across the country, and it's been a really cool program to develop because not many chefs are able to deliver high quality food at 30,000 feet. So,
what's next for you guys? Like, as far as what do you? I mean, I feel like every industry, every vocation, you're always looking to grow, to evolve, to get better, to stay, like you said earlier, ahead of the curve. What goes into that as far as what you're doing, trying to just make everything better, keep that established standard of excellence that you've had, but what do you see as the future of this?
So for me, as the leader of the business, and I'm actually back in school now. So I dropped out of school to be a chef all these years ago, and now I'm actually studying culinary medicine. There's a new movement of establishing culinary medicine as a field, and so I'm studying under a professor out at University of Montana. It's all online. But by the middle of the summer, I'll be level 1 culinary medicine certified.
Wow.
And then I'll go on and get level 2 and see how long, see what those look like. But it's taking all of my past and being able to leverage it forward to create culinary interventions for what we call lifestyle diseases now, right? All of these different things that people deal with. Really, it's the way that our food system impacts the individual, right? Our food system is designed for profit. It's not designed for health.
Right.
And so the impacts of that food system on the individual are dire, and they're getting worse. And so I want to be a part of the solution going forward, and how we create foods that can be enjoyable and delicious and exciting, but also good for you and grounded in quality, not grounded in convenience. And that's some of the things that we got to realize as a culture is convenience can't be the only decision maker, right? We have to make some better decisions based on quality.
And that's got to be just trying to get rid of as much ultra processed and processed foods as possible. Because like you said, it's that oak tree by your grandma's house with all the fresh food. I mean, that's what we should be striving for, right. 30 different plants every week, that sort of thing. 30 things that come out of the ground, whether it's seeds, nuts, grains,
right,
vegetables, plants, herbs, all that kind of stuff. If you take care of that, if you're able to just bring that kind of variety into your diet, you're typically going to get the nutrients that you need as well.
Yeah. And so for the, obviously, I can take what I'm learning and apply it to the athletes that I'm feeding now. But we've had a call from individuals that want access to the same quality food we're feeding the calves. And so we rolled out a program called Superfood Direct, where we're delivering straight to people's homes the same quality nutrition we deliver to the calves. And so that way, as we learn and grow and can develop new products and new flavor profiles, we'll be able to also spread it out to the public at large a little bit more and get feedback directly from them, because at the end of the day, people got to enjoy it, they got to engage with the food, and it's it's an individual experience. So that feedback is also critical, and understanding I can make it's funny, as a chef, most chefs that I know, their favorite menu items are probably not the most popular, right? The most popular things on the menu is never the chef's favorite. It's always like the funny things, you know what I mean? Like the most creative things we put on the menu never sells the way we want it to. It's the pasta with whatever, blah blah blah, you know. And
the public's taste buds aren't that involved.
Yeah, well, it's just a matter of, I guess, risk. You know, people see it as a risk when they try new things.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I try to break for people is, you know what, like take the risk. What is going to happen? Maybe you're gonna accidentally like a new food. You know, like take that risk with food, and you'll get the reward later on. But those are the kinds of things that we try to continue to do is, listen to the athletes, listen to the franchises we work with, and then also the individual consumers, because at the end of the day, they're going to be the ones driving change in our food system. And for me as a chef, I want to be an agent of change in our food system.
How can people find out more about your delivery?
mysuperfd.com. Is our website, and it's called Superfood Direct. It's right there, so they could check it out, see a couple of recipes that we got up there now, and what we're delivering next week. So.
And when you're a complete culinary, when you complete that culinary medicine degree, you can be writing like food prescriptions.
So eventually there will be. So Dr. Michael Fenster is the guy that I'm studying under, and he literally does it right now, where he's a board certified cardiologist and a certified ACF certified chef, right? So he's I've been looking for a mentor, and finally I found one. But he literally works on people's diet and says this is what you should be doing. There's cardiology interventions. So he's prescribing food to help people with their heart instead of medicine, and that's really the ultimate goal. Absolutely.
Yeah, and we can all learn from that. Appreciate your time as always. Appreciate your food especially. Thanks to Robbie Wood, Chef Robbie Wood, for spending some time with us today on Break the Ice. Superfood Performance Nutrition fuels the Washington Capitals players and staff on and off the ice. Each bite is energy-packed, highly nutritious, and engineered to boost recovery time. When they're not feeding pro athletes, Superfood is bringing the same high-quality nutrition to offices nationwide through their flagship corporate meal program, Simply Lunch. So if you have a high-performance team that needs fueling, check out mysuperfd.com for more information.